Mainstream media have decided that it's another week to say that Chris Luxon's going to be rolled. I'll talk about that with Chris Trotter, but Chris Trotter's latest column on Substack suggests that Chris Hipkins and Labor need to be very worried about Winston Peters. Let's find out why. Chris joins us now. Hi, mate. How are you?
I'm hobbling about the place, Sean.
Oh,
I've got a knee injury. Oh, it's not, not
You've got to stop playing squash, Chris.
Oh, Sean, I have never played
squash. I thought that would be the answer to that question. Look, I
do the occasional spot of gardening, and that can be hazardous.
Yes, it can. Look, I was really interested in your column, and I think it raises an interesting point about New Zealand politics that people don't often get. And it affects the right too. Often, and I can never understand why ACT and New Zealand First argue so much, because I think Winston Peters' true catchment is the centre-left of politics. And you've written a column that suggests he is perhaps a huge threat to Labor this election. Why?
Well, I think there is a part of the Labor vote which is very precarious from the perspective of Chris Hipkins and his colleagues. And the precarious part of the Labor vote tends to be older, it tends to be Pākehā, and overwhelmingly it tends to be male. If you look at the breakdown of support for Labor that the pollsters give us, you find that there is a massive gender gap. Labor is much more strongly supported by women than it is by men. And there are still, of course, a great many New Zealand men who vote for the Labor Party, but I think they vote for the Labor Party increasingly with gritted teeth, because much of the Labor Party and much of Labor policy they find very difficult to reconcile with the Labor Party of their youth. The Labor Party of their youth was much more recognisably a party for the working person, a working class party. That was certainly its history. That's what it was born out of, a working class movement. It is very difficult to see that any longer in the Labor Party, particularly as it is represented in Parliament. And some of the political positions, the ideological positions that Labor promotes sit very uneasily with...
Give us an example.
You can probably start with gender politics, which here, as in the United States, is a real deal breaker. You could go down a short step to Maori Pākehā relations, to the treaty, to all that follows from the elevation of the treaty, constitutionally speaking.
All right. So, Chris, do we know what proportion of...
People, they know the issues.
Yeah. Do we know what proportion of Labor supporters are these vulnerable, white, older fellas? Working class, blue collars, white blue collar males. Yeah. Do we know what proportion of Labor's supporters made up from that group?
Yeah, I would say of Labor's support, somewhere between a tenth and a fifth. In other words, 10 to 20%.
Okay.
Of Labor's overall support, and that's what the advertisers would call the universe. That's the biggest number that you could probably.
All right, let's take someone in that 10 to 20%, which is why I find this column interesting. So they can't go left to Greens or Maori Party because that is the antithesis of the politics in Labor that makes them uncomfortable. So it would seem to me they really have only two choices. They can go to National or go to New Zealand First. Now, why not National? Because they seem to be closer philosophically to Labor. That's a shorter leap, isn't it, than the leap to New Zealand First?
Well, you would have thought so. And I have been surprised that National hasn't made itself an easier place to move to.
Lily pad. An easier lily pad to jump to. Yeah.
Yes. But I have picked up from discussions over the last, 2 years, a real sense of surprise that National still seems to be holding fast to many of these socially liberal positions, which I think propelled it into government and which caused defections from Labor on a fairly major scale. I think there were a huge number of defections from Labor to National in the 2023 election. Now, when I say huge, that's probably the wrong word. A surprising number is probably a better way of putting it. A surprising number of people went from Labor to National. Now, if you're imbued with the sort of tribal loyalties that apply in both of the two major parties, that's a very significant thing to do.
Yeah.
And that is why I think New Zealand First, has such a big opportunity here, because it is a much shorter step, really, from Labor to New Zealand First than it is from Labor to National. I think people went from Labor to National in 23 because they were not certain that Winston was going to be back, and they wanted to make damn sure that Labor lost. And one of the propellants of that shift was, the radical liberal ideas that Labor was associated with. So they really wanted to make sure that Labor fell. But now I think there's going to be a shift from National towards New Zealand First. I mean, ACT is always out of the picture because ACT is just too far to the right, I think, for these sort of voters.
Okay, so Winston picks up some soft Labor National guys who may have come across from Labor. Now they find even a more and once you've gone, once you've jumped once, you're happy to jump again, aren't you? So National's vulnerable.
That's what all the research shows, that once this sort of voter has abandoned their traditional loyalties, the game changes. Classic example being France. France used to have a huge communist party, played a major role for most of the post-war period. Now the communists, would barely top 1 or 2% instead of 20%.
Yeah.
And you see those voters, a lot of them shifted to Le Pen, to what is now called the National Rally. And that's what, we see.
Okay, well, let's get back to New Zealand, Chris. So, so votes that Labor might have been able to take back off National will not be available because they'll go to Winston. And how does Winston convince one of these soft Labor voters to vote New Zealand First? What are the issues and policies? Is it the social conservatism on things like puberty blockers that he's getting into? Is it, I don't know, is it nationalism and immigration? How does he grab those votes?
All of the above, I would say. These are the hot button issues, as they say in the United States and in New Zealand. We can reel them off: treaty issues, Maori-Pākehā relations, gender politics, immigration. I think Winston, having a very sensitive antennae for this sort of thing, looks at the looming free trade agreement with India.
Yeah.
One of the components of which is very likely to be
immigration relaxation
over immigration from the Indian subcontinent. These are all trigger issues, and they are all currently issues which Labor cannot really do anything about other than what it's doing at the moment, because were Labor to abandon its social liberal stance, there would be a caucus revolt.
Yeah.
Because the people in caucus are true believers when it comes to these issues. They will not compromise on them. and they, would rather. And it reminds me of the dark days of Rogernomics. I knew we were lost when a whole lot of the new entrants to the Parliament, conversion people, true Rogenome said, I would rather be voted out than vote against these policies. And I thought, we're doomed.
Okay. So
what else has he got over an MP but to unelect him?
Winston's got his game plan. I just want to look at two other issues. The chatterati, and I'm sorry, the more I read of mainstream media, the more crap I think it is. A few columnists who said, the spill's on for Luxon. I'll be honest, I see absolutely no evidence that the spill's on, except the writings of a few columnists who are running up to Christmas and don't have much else to say. When you spill a National Party leader, you do it after Christmas, don't you? You have a think about it over the barbie. Do you hear anything that Luxon is any more vulnerable than he's ever been?
What I hear is that he is not a respected Prime Minister.
Yes.
He's not a liked Prime Minister. And that is very, very common. You encounter those sort of feelings all over New Zealand. I think the National Party is very loath to change its leaders when they are in office. There is very little, if no evidence at all, of it being a successful tactic. Leaders have changed or been forcibly ejected prior to an election. In almost every case, the party that does that goes on to lose. And the Nats are nothing if, not good historians of their own party's progress. They will be very, very reluctant.
So I just want you to make a call. All these columns, Matthew Hooton, Audrey Young, Heather Duplessis Allen, it's all Todge. They're just interviewing the typewriters.
Oh, I'm sure there are one or two people who are happy to whisper in their ears, cultivate the relationship, and will spread gossip. I'm pretty sure that Labor people are briefing gallery journalists.
And as I say, we've got a mainstream media who don't like National and don't like Luxon, so of course they're going to have a crowd. I mean, I'm open about it. The guy won't talk to me, and I said we had a problem with him the start of this year or late last year. So, but I still don't see anything that says he's about to be rolled.
Look, I think what would trigger it are disastrous polls. And by disastrous, I mean
mid-20s.
Mid-20s, 25, 24, something of that sort. That would trigger a spill for purely self-defensive purposes as far as most MPs are concerned. Because if it gets down to that level, there's going to be a clear out. And, in those kind of circumstances, you are willing to take a risk. You look at, Helen Clark got rid of Geoffrey Palmer and put in Mike Moore because she could read a poll along with the best of them. And she realised that, Labor could be wiped out if there wasn't something done. And I think that might produce a change of leader. But I suspect, as per the historical precedents, it wouldn't work because if you're that damned unpopular now, you're unlikely to get any more popular simply by
I was
changing
amazed
your
at
leader.
Luxon at a press conference a few weeks ago, asked about the latest poll and Labor going up. And what he didn't say was, and he should have come back with, Labor's going up because the Greens and the Maori Party are going down. And maybe it's a time when we don't look at individual parties. They've got to look at the power block that they're with and say, are we back in as a coalition?
Well, that's right. And in spite of Luxon's, failure to fire, as it were, most of the polls, more recent ones anyway, still show the right-wing bloc winning.
Winning, yeah.
And the reason for that is the surge in support for New Zealand First.
And exactly what we talked about, Winston being able to take votes off the other side of the ledger.
Exactly.
And that's important. Why then, and this is the last point I wanted to cover, this is great, you always help me get my head straight, Chris. What the hell is going on? Again, they did it last election, and David Seymour should learn from this. He took what could have been a stunning result for ACT and messed it up by having a fight with Winston. Now Winston's poking him back, saying we'll get rid of the regulatory standards bill. What the hell is going on here?
Well, they are very, very unlikely bedfellows when you sort of step back a bit and think about it. I mean, I have been, frankly, impressed by how restrained both men have been over the last 2 years. But once again, what I think Winston is doing is he's saying, I need to keep building my vote.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't lie on the far right of politics.
No, that area is covered. I can raid National and I can raid Labour. What I think he's currently got in his mind, and I mean, this is just me guessing.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure. I haven't talked to Winston. I've got no inside information here whatsoever. But the logic of it at the moment, to me, is all about the crossbenchers. In other words, you build, if you're New Zealand First, you build a very strong parliamentary presence, the biggest you can get, but you don't commit to either side. You simply say, well, we're here, we will judge issues as they arise. At a pinch, he might go one way or the other with the most rudimentary of confidence and supply agreements. But the thing to bear in mind about the crossbenchers is that it fits perfectly with the zeitgeist, which is we're sick of the tribes, we're sick of the
so
national
you're saying
right or wrong,
New
Labour
Zealand
right or
First
wrong.
sits there after the next election and say, we're not going to build a government down, but we're not going to join a coalition to create a majority government.
Yeah, you would sell that if you were Winston on a strong,
and then we'd get the Labour National
popular.
Coalition.
Yeah.
Then you'd get the Labour National Coalition.
And Winston would laugh all the way to the electoral bank, of course, because nothing would inflict more damage on both of the major parties than a grand coalition.
Yeah.
And nothing would set up a populist party of the right
more than a grand
superbly.
Yeah. I hear you. Look, fascinating session, Chris. Chris, just one other thing. I am amazed at the media coverage in reaction to the restriction, not the ban, on the prescription of puberty blockers to young people in New Zealand, the willful misreporting, the Human Rights Commission spreading disinformation about the decision. And now I look, and as I look into this story, and I'm going to keep looking into it, just how deep transgender cultish ideology has permeated so many institutions in New Zealand, public and private. Can you ever...
Well, I'm with you 100%. I find it alarming, to be honest. I would have thought that most medical professionals, most responsible politicians would have welcomed the moratorium pending, evidence. Remember that? But no, you're right. The reaction has been extraordinary, not least the reaction of the Human Rights Commission.
Look, I had he wouldn't come on for an interview. Stephen Rainbow, I get the impression, is not happy with what Prudence Walker, his Rainbow representatives, have said, but he can do nothing about it. But he said to me, she's entitled to her opinion, Sean. And I said, yes, but she's not entitled to make up her own facts.
Look, I read that piece on the Human Rights Commission website, and honestly, if that had been submitted to a first-year philosophy student's tutor or lecturer, it would have got an A these days, let's face it, but in my day, it would have got a C- at best. I mean, assertion is not evidence. You know, conviction is not proof. And I just thought that was disgraceful. And the more I read things coming out of outfits like the Human Rights Commission, the more I wish that National Action New Zealand First had their very own Project 2023. So that when they arrived in office, they were ready to go, and they had to.
And they knew what parts of the swamp to drain first. Chris, always a pleasure, mate. We'll get up and we'll recommend that Substack. I think we've found a way of publishing a link through to your Substack. Which is the way we do it.
That's very good. Yep.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. Cheers. Political commentator Chris Trotter, we better go to a break.